What's up you guys, I'm Eric and welcome back to my channel. No, you grow up. Today's video is going to be the third video in my Playmates series, and originally I had intended for this video to cover the 1990 and the 1991 mainline figures, but I ended up talking so long about just the 1990 figures that's all this video is going to be today. So the 1990 and the 1991 waves are going to get broken up into two videos, so I'm going to get an extra video out of this, at least one more than I planned on doing. But yeah, I'm really excited to talk about these figures. This is my favorite mainline wave. It has my favorite Playmates figure of all time in it. So yeah, let's just get into it. In my last video in this series, I talked about the mainline figures from the 88 and the 89 waves. And in this one, I'll be picking up right where I left off with the 1990 figures. I have a lot of personal experience playing with all the figures other than Genghis from the first two waves of the line. I know those figures so well, I didn't even have to look at them or keep track of how many figures I'd talked about when I was writing the last video to know I'd talked about all 20. In my opinion, those are the 20 most important characters in the whole line. If they didn't work the way they did, this line never would have been able to do what it did going into the 90s. I might not know these 12 figures quite as well, but some of them were also part of Pat and Cliff's huge collection, and they're just as iconic to me as the first 20 characters. I feel like you can see a pretty apparent shift as we move from the 80s to the 90s with this line. When we were going into 88, the Turtles were a risk. Going into 89, they were a Cinderella hit. In 1990, they were the shit. You can tell they were given way more money to work with for this 1990 wave. There are more figures, there's bigger figures, and they have way more detailed sculpting and way more deco to go around for the entire wave. The 1990 figures took some of the artistic liberties that the sculptors started doing in the 89 wave, and they doubled down on it. The 90s figures have some of the best sculpting and most fun designs out of the entire main line. Even though I just stated that this is my favorite wave, we're going to start things off with what I think is one of the worst characters in the entire main line. Panda Khan is like Usagi, where he actually has his own comic series, but I don't think I've ever seen the Turtles have a crossover with him, or that they even have one that I know of. I feel like I'm pretty well versed in the comic world, and I've never heard anyone talk about these comics before anywhere. I honestly couldn't tell you if I ever played with this figure as a kid, or if I ever even saw him in person. It's not that he's even a bad figure, he's just boring. Sticking him in the best wave didn't do him any favors either. The only time you're ever going to hear me talk about this panda this much again is if I have to complain about Super 7 wasting a slot for him in their line. Two figures that I think were sculpted for earlier waves are Fugitoid and the Triceraton. I just feel like if you look at these two figures, they fit much better with the first two waves than they do for the third one. If you've read the original Mirage run, both of these characters appear very early, and I can guarantee you when they were starting this line, Eastman and Laird wanted them in, but they were probably shelved for the time because they had no presence in the cartoon and they didn't think kids would recognize them. Pretty much every character that came out in the first two waves came from the first two seasons of the cartoon, so it made sense they went with them because they were uncertain on how this line was still going to do at the time. Now, I'm not saying that either of these are bad figures by any means. Like I said, they just don't seem to fit in very well with this wave, and I don't really think Panda Khan does either. I played with both of these two figures a ton, and I love how Fugitoid's chest can open up and how all of his weapons can pour down to his body. And it's really funny that if you are on any Facebook groups or anything like that, you'll see a lot of people just realizing that he can do this now. I never knew the Triceratons were an entire race when I was a kid. I thought this was just one figure called Triceraton. The only other thing I knew about him is that he was on the cover of the third video game, even though he never appeared in the third video game. Yeah, classic NES misleading box art there. There is one more figure in this wave that I find to be a bit more on the simple side compared to the rest of his wave mates, and I'm sure I'm going to get some flack for this one, but I think Ray Fillet is possibly the most overrated character in this wave. People seem to love him and I don't know why. I'm assuming it's from the Archie comics, and I think he's actually a different character than that, but this figure is just kind of boring to me. He does have something that's a nice addition to the 90s waves, which is companion or sidekicks or whatever you want to call these little dudes. I'm not going to lie though, if I had him as a kid, he definitely would have been in the bathtub with me all the time. I was a sucker for color change gimmicks, like all other gimmicks. But other than that, he just doesn't really do a lot for me. With those guys out of the way, I feel like the rest of this wave is hot fire. I never played with or even saw Pizza Face as a kid, but he's definitely grown on me a lot for a figure that I have no nostalgia towards. For him being a human character, they did a good job of making him fun enough to fit in with the other mutants in this wave. Wingnut is one of the most standout figures in the whole main line to me. His wings give him a lot more presence than the other figures, and I love how Screwloose can perch on his back. I wish all the companion or sidekicks or whatever you want to call them figures could do stuff like that. Napoleon, whose name I'm actually using correctly in this video, is another figure that I never played with as a kid, but I like a lot as an adult. I really wish they would have kept going with this gimmick and did all 4 bros in different turtles like they did with the 2012 line, and at least we did get another one. Mondo kicks off the top 5 figures of this wave for me, and even though he only has 1 accessory, it's one of the best in the entire line. His board is pretty awesome, and it's just something that never would have been able to be done in the first 2 waves with a budget. Scumbug is probably one of my favorite figures in the whole mainline that I never saw or played with as a kid. I think he has possibly the best sculpted head and the best painted head out of every figure in the mainline, plus it has an articulated jaw. His body is pretty good too, and he has a lot of great accessories, and he's probably honestly a top 3 figure for me, but my 3rd favorite figure just has a lot of nostalgic value. Right now my 3rd favorite figure is Mutant Man, and I know he seems to be the figure that a lot of people don't like very much from this wave. I feel like a lot of people just fault him for having 4 points of articulation, but I feel like he's an awesome figure. His actual sculpt is super underrated, and look at all that stuff on the inside. The shrunken head with the eyeballs and all the organs and stuff like that. Like I mentioned before, I was a sucker for his gimmick and being able to fill him up with water and having all this stuff swirled around on the inside. He's my all-time favorite figure that Pat and Cliff had that I played with of theirs. I loved this dude as a kid, and I definitely still do today. Even though I hated this figure as a kid, Muckman is without a doubt one of my favorites now. Do you want to know why I didn't like him as a kid? Just because this manhole cover was stuck to his foot. That's it. It just drove me nuts. I didn't know why, but I just hated that it was there. But as an adult, I actually kind of like this part of the sculpt. In my opinion, he's the best sculpted figure in the entire line. With all the extra money they had for this line, I still just can't figure out why they didn't give him like 2 or 3 more colors, so this sculpt could have just popped the way Varner Studios wanted it to. One day I would like to get a custom painted Muckman because so many people have done such great things with this sculpt. You know, I was saving the best for last, and it isn't just my favorite figure of this wave, but it's my favorite Playmates figure, period. He's the only one from this wave that I personally had, and it's Slash. The second I saw this figure, I had to have him. I didn't see him in the cartoon first, I didn't know about the Archie comics. This was the first version of Slash that I had ever seen. He's honestly one of the least flashy figures in the entire wave, and he's kind of small in stature, but I just love him. I don't know if it was the black bandana, or all the spiked pads, or the fact that he just looked like an evil turtle, but I just love this figure. It's like the old cliche, I may not know art, but I know what I like. That's how I feel about this figure. I remember one time when I was playing with him as a kid, I had him hanging from the inside of a lampshade, and his knee was up against the light bulb, and it melted his spike down to a nub, and I was devastated. That was the day I learned an important physics lesson the hard way. Inefficiency produces heat, and light bulbs from the 90s were very, very inefficient. But without a doubt, I have more memories with this figure than I probably do any other figures in the main line. Probably because I got him later on, so my memory was just a little bit better. But I loved this figure when I got him. I finally had a villain to go along with Krang, and it always took all 4 of my bros to bring him down. I loved him so much, sometimes I'd play with him without my other turtles, and just kinda used him as like an anti-hero type, and I didn't even know what that was at the time. People are starting to get their Super 7 Slashes, and I cannot wait to get mine, but unfortunately I ordered the whole wave from Big Bad Toy Store, so I'll probably be one of the last people to get it. I talked way longer about these figures than I planned on doing, so we'll end things here for today and pick back up with the 1991 figures in the next one. Alright you guys, so that'll wrap things up for this one. And again, I'm having a blast making this series. It has been a lot of fun to just sit down and think about these figures, and I know some of the stuff is a little bit redundant. I'm terrible at figure reviews, and that's not really what this is intended to be. More so just kind of my thoughts and childhood memories with each of these figures. And again, if I didn't play with these figures as a kid, I probably am not going to have as much to say. But yeah, thank you to all the new subscribers. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for everyone that has been here for the long haul or for a couple weeks or whatever. Just thank you guys for watching my videos. Thank you for liking, commenting. I've started kind of DMing with some of you guys through Instagram and stuff, and that's pretty cool too. Again, I just want a bigger reach into the community. I just want to, meet some more people to talk about with stuff like this, share ideas. And yeah, like I said, I'm having a lot of fun this channel. I'm getting out of it exactly what I wanted to get out of it. So hopefully it'll be a quick turnaround. We'll get Wave 4 video out here, but that's all I really got for you today. So take it easy, be safe, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.